Allotmentgate began in the late 90s, when a Holbeach parish councillor decided he wished to hand some allotment land back to Her Majesty the Queen's Crown Estate. The council agreed with him, but when the clerk wrote and told the Crown agents, the agent was to reply that they would only consider a surrender with one or possibly two names. Soon afterwards, it was claimed the allotments were losing money and rents would have to rise. It is not sure whether the aim was to cover up a boundary problem or a payback over a bankruptcy, but it is the events of the latter that resulted in the recordings taking place. In the late 80s, a Holbeach businessman was owed several £1000s for work done, but he only received a small cheque and a letter from a solicitor. The letter inferred that the solicitor was in the process of selling 2 properties, and that when the properties were sold, they thought there would be sufficient funds to settle the debt. However, the person only owned 1 property, and when the solicitor was contacted for payment, they were to say, the letter said, it was limited to monies actually received by us, and they had received no monies because the person had took the sale away from that firm of solicitors. The debt was not paid. The businessman hit financial difficulties and ultimately went into bankruptcy. However, the bank, which was owed money where the councillor's wife worked at, did not go into the bankruptcy. Creditors included the Customs and Excise, Inland Revenue and the Department of Employment, who all proxied their votes to the insolvency practitioner, a person the bankrupt person never did meet. Apart from collecting their fees, they was only really interested in one other thing: selling the bankrupt's property, which was sold by a local estate agent without being publicly advertised, without an independent valuation, to his friend. Questions were asked, but nobody in authority wanted to investigate. The problem with the bankruptcy was lack of evidence. If now what was happening with the allotments was linked, it was not going to be repeated. In 1998, when the council was discussing a rent rise, papers were given to a parish councillor who stated he'd been to see the clerk and it was going to be an agendaed item, but it never was. In September of 2000, the council was challenged that the raising of the allotment rents was an act of fraud. At the following meeting in October, the allegation was responded to by Councillor Charles Nicholas Worth. The chairman, who had been given a plan and asked to measure a building plot, was not at the meeting. The meeting was chaired by the vice chairman. It was him in 1998 who had been given the documentation when the council was considering a rent rise. Councillor Worth presented a report. It stated, making sense of Mr. Pole's documentation nearly needed an Enigma machine if it had not been stolen from Bletchley Park. That statement virtually summed up the report. It was a defamation of character exercise. It mentioned documentation given to the chairman, but the report was based on documentation given to the acting chairman of that meeting. The report contained few facts and finished by saying that Mr. Pole should take his allegations to the district auditor. When the district auditor was spoken to, he said he'd never met Nick Worth and had never spoken to him. In the meeting, Mr. Poll had called the report a pack of lies. The press reported on the meeting, but only stated at the end of their report that Mr. Poll disagreed, and never gave him a chance to reply. Holbeach Parish Council meetings are preceded by an open forum. The following November, Mr. Poll tried to reply to Councillor Worth's report in the open forum, but Councillor Francis Biggerdike stopped him and told him that Councillor Worth's report was quite specific, that he should take his allegations to the district auditor, and that was the end of the matter. It appeared councillors were involved in a cover-up, and memories went back to the time of the bankruptcy. Subsequently, in December, Councillor Francis Biggerdike was visited and spoken to, and this time recorded, and admitted that the documentation the report was based on was not given to him at the previous council meeting. The councillors, in their cover-up, had sowed the seeds as to what was going to become Allotmentgate.